We feel farther apart than we've ever been. From Zoom meetings to social distancing, when this ends, and it will end, people will slowly come back together. Live music always brought people together, but not everyone will be rushing to concerts and music festivals. The need for interaction will begin on a smaller scale, grabbing a bite to eat and a coffee at your local shop. It begins with the venue, which we define as the restaurant, bar, and cafe. But the love for music doesn't end. Now more than ever, people can't be paying for expensive tickets, can't plan that far ahead, and can't be traveling. Matchband brings local, authentic live music into these comfortable spaces.
We want to revitalize the local music scene. Matchband brings these three groups together: the musicians, the venues, and the music goers, together through a single application, joining three extremely profitable industries. The local musician will fill the void of the $31 billion concert industry, canceled for the foreseeable future. The $899 billion restaurant industry becomes our venue as we enter a $189 billion app market. We are an app interface with these three logins. 3 problems, 1 solution. Matchband. We've walked the streets of Media, Pennsylvania as a case study to test out Matchband, and the results were fantastic. We spoke with around 15 restaurants and 30 residents. Venues are interested, musicians are ready, and musicgoers are eager. This is our live day 1. How will this be possible? Take a closer look at our interface.
Even with a surplus of talented musicians, there is no centralized platform to connect amateur musicians to small-time venues. Whether you have a job, school, family, or are just plain busy, in-person introductions are daunting. There is no LinkedIn for amateur musicians to connect virtually. Musicians need this now more than ever. With Matchband, all musicians have to do is customize their profile, search for nearby venues, communicate with owners, and get to their gig.
It's also hard for venues to find musicians efficiently. In media, venues complain that finding musicians is not a priority during work hours, especially now. Outside of a musician strolling in, venues stick with the same performer they've had for the last 5 years. And venues that don't have live music don't know where to start. Matchband streamlines this process. Sift through talent, present your business, and start a dialogue. Venues are reeling and will return to a competitive market. Matchband is a marketing tool that brings in new customers and improves atmosphere and quality. By establishing a week in, week out music environment, Matchband would attract a new wave of regular customers, not one-time guests.
By connecting musicians to venues, Matchband will have shows ready for an audience. Our music goers, now itching to get out of their homes, want authentic local experiences. Matchband simplifies searching for shows and venues. No more endless Googling and only hearing of shows by word of mouth. Filter by location, genre, etc. Or go directly to the musicians you follow and find out where they are this Friday night.
In terms of our competitors, there are booking agents that connect musicians to concert-like venues, and there are platforms like So Far Sounds and Bands in Town that connect concerts to music goers, but no one does all 3 on the local level. Booking agents are expensive and inaccessible, So Far Sounds requires tickets, and Bands in Town doesn't serve the local restaurant venue. We are creating local music content, but not in a concert format. No tickets, just quality musicians in local spaces. Logistically, we've spoken with developers and executives at Mile of Music and So Far Sounds, which helped us envision entering the market in 2 phases.
In the entry phase, our only development costs will be Amazon Web Services, subscriptions to Stripe payments, and a developer fee. SoundCloud access is free. After we've established ourselves in media and surrounding towns and generated revenue, we enter our active phase, which requires additional web services, Google Maps, and a more advanced developer. We use both a subscription and transaction model to receive payments. App access is free for 1 month to entice use and expand our brand. We then charge an annual subscription fee of $600 to venues, supplemented by a 10% transaction fee per performance. Compared to the average restaurant marketing costs of $60,000, this is a bargain.
Matchband can onboard over 100 venues in the first year. At 1 performance per week, that's $164,000 in revenue. This is just the potential in the Philadelphia main line, but we'd work anywhere. Our model is scalable to suburban-like towns outside of metropolitan areas. As our user base expands, we become increasingly valuable to venues. To start, we're aiming for 100 venues, 500 musicians, and the thousands of musicgoers at our fingertips. Our target audience in the entry phase is the local college because they supply both the musicians and their friends, the musicgoers. The Philadelphia area is home to over 500 colleges and high schools. We will tap into these resources through campus ambassadors and social media.
Matchband fills a need for the musician, the venues, and the music goer. At our core, we believe that a live in-person experience can't be replicated on Spotify or on Zoom. The word of mouth, local music scene can be fixed by an application that better organizes it. For all the people that want accessible, findable live music, Matchband is your solution. Thank you.
Well done, Matchband. Cool. Yep, great. Thanks, judges, for popping up. And we're going to give you some time to ask questions.
All right, I'll bite first. Well done, Matchband. Really great to hear your model here, and I think you did a nice job of market sizing, competitive landscape, and it was great to hear the details you shared on pricing. My question with a platform play like this is, who's going to upload all this data that's going to ultimately drive value to the platform itself? Is it that you expect the musicians, the music goers, and the venues to do that? And how do you incentivize them to do that when you're getting started, when there might not be an immediate return on that time that they're spending to use your platform versus a host of others that might be out there? What does that incentive structure look like?
Yeah, I think that's a terrific question. Specifically for the musicians, it's free to use. And what right now, especially right now, where there are not performing opportunities, we can talk to them and ask and basically tell them that there will be performing opportunities in the future. So we think that the musicians, it would be beneficial early on, and we think we could sell it to them in that way. We then want to then move to the venues by then presenting to the venues. We have a musician base, we have music goers, we have customers that potentially would be interested in coming into your business and performing in shows or just coming in and eating at your restaurant. So we think that by having this two-part plan that they would help us in the early going especially.
Yeah, and just to jump on that, I'm going to share a slide that is shows kind of what our thought process is. We know that we can't do this alone. We're going to need teams that tackle each of these tasks. So when Drew started off by saying, first, we're going to attract music goers, it's because there's almost no cost for them. There is no cost. There's only possible benefits. There's only possible paychecks in the future. So they sign on, upload links to their SoundCloud. Other things that we detailed in our project report were mission statements. How much would you pay? Where would you put, what spaces are comfortable for you to perform in, photos, other things. They do that by sending in an application for us, and then our web team will get that onto the app. And then we're going to move to onboarding. So we'll onboard by saying, look, take our phone, look at the app. This is who we have on there waiting, ready to go. We've advertised at the following places, and that's our incentive. The second incentive is the fact that we are a marketing tool. So an alternative to it's about 30,000 to 75,000, which we average in the upper end is about 60,000 in marketing that restaurants pay. We could be an alternative that's much cheaper, $600 annually and 10% per performance.
Thank you, Betsy.
I have a related question to that, actually. That last slide that you just had there, yeah. You mentioned, these 5 phases of teams that are going to be working with you to get this off the ground. But when you talk about the costs that you plan to incur is largely sort of within your first year AWS and I think the transaction fees for payment. How are you accounting these teams in your sort of cost and revenue structure beyond just sort of the sweat equity of, the co-founders, whether it's you guys or volunteers you have working on this venture?
Yeah, I think, again, that's a great question. And I think that to put some context on that slide, it's best thought of in our active phase when we need a more developed, beyond an MVP level product of an app, as well as we're searching for broader areas. We're going into nearby towns. It's going to involve a whole team of people to scale, to reach these areas. I think in that entry phase that we talked about where the costs are down, I think in-house, we could do it between ourselves along with the developer.
Yeah, we understand that these teams would, if we hired more people to participate in them. The way that we use the word team here, I guess, is more just objectives that we need to do. But if they did turn into actually physical teams that people were on, we understand that we'd incur greater costs, but we have a cushion between our revenue and our costs, especially in our entry phase, because it's only about $6,000 compared to the revenue that we hope to get. But our plan for the active phase is obviously a lot more ambitious. So we probably would need to hire or look for volunteers within our friend groups and Swarthmore Friends.
Again, I have something that kind of plays off what Marissa's talking about with some of this. I'm one of the most boring people in the world. And so the fact that I haven't been in any restaurant that has live music, I see the guitar behind on Nick. I could put a little bit of a kazoo over my right shoulder and I'd feel cool about that. But so there's a gap on that one. Some of this, and it's not uncommon with startups, is due to the power of addressable markets. And so you guys find 400 restaurants. Yeah, technically, you know, they all serve food when we don't have rampant viruses and things. But then you throw a number 25% at the capture rate for that. And I want to know a little bit about where the 25% comes from, but also just a quick hit on this, that if you go back to your finance slide, you guys show you have 100 companies, but you're not going to have all those 100 companies on day one. The reason it becomes important that you're going to have some that no one's going to sign up on January 1st, but let's assume on the 2nd you get somebody, but you're going to have sales on December 30th. And so on average, assuming you're going to have it more backloaded because they're going to wait and see, are you getting critical mass? And so if you have them evenly across the year, at best you're going to have 50% of the revenue there, because you won't get $600 for all 100 companies, all 100 restaurants for 365 days. You're going to have your sales occur at the beginning and the end of the first year. My point is, you pay development costs, you've got a burn rate, you've got a few things going on with this. And so you stare that down. I love the fact you're talking revenue regardless, but on that, I have two questions. One of them is, what is the sales process? It worries me a little bit that you're talking about a Groupon model, which said it was an e-commerce company, but it's got feet on the street going to all of these businesses trying to sign them up for electronic coupons. And so the scalability problem with that is a difficulty. So what is the sales process? And let me shut up and let you guys hit that one. And I'm talking for venues.
Yeah, 4 venues. So when we did our initial market research, we went to Media, which is a couple miles from Swarthmore, and we walked up and down the street for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. In that amount of time, we spoke to 15 restaurants, told them about our, what we called a school project at that time, pitched it to them and said, would you be interested? And pretty much all of them, except for one that currently uses booking agents and doesn't know if they'd be worth switching yet, said yes. Obviously, this was a hypothetical situation, but we were able to get those 15 restaurants interested within under like 2 hours. Of course, we understand that the goal of getting 100 restaurants is ambitious, but that 25%, I guess to answer that question, where that came from is we looked at the range of restaurants that are in Media and compared that to the ones that we've spoken to, whether that be in person or on the phone, and it was about 25%, and we use that as our sort of scale. But we understand that these costs would be spread. The goal is that if we have those first 2 parts, the music goers and the musicians on the app, it's an easier sell because they see the customers that could be coming in. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and just to add to that, and Betsy, do you want to pull up the marketing analytics? And just to add on to that is that our bet is really through live music is that Matchband, and I understand your concern definitely of that, you know, maybe you haven't enjoyed or necessarily, you know, see this as a draw, but we see that Matchband will increase the amount of customers for our venues, just flat out simply because as we go through our entry phase in Media, I feel like we'll be able to demonstrate the value of Matchband through increased sales numbers. We need that data, and our cost benefit report, as shown on this slide, would offer a compelling case for venues to onboard Matchband in the future. So I think scalability wise, it becomes easier later on when we have these definite numbers. And so you can see on that analytics report, we'll provide on app traffic for your venue, detail analysis on the uptick in food and drink sales, and we'll customize this report to best suit your business goals. And really, Matchband as a marketing tool, I think makes it a compelling case for venues.
One more thing, because scalability is so important to our development, we know that we need different strategies for different types of venues. So we've sort of split our outreach strategy into three. First is those that don't use third-party providers and are interested in live music, which is actually a lot of places. Even in media, for example, even places that don't regularly have music always participate in the like Night Under the Lights event and their Jazz Fest event. They have a couple different events throughout the year. And because they've just had a little bit of taste of what music does to their atmosphere, they've loved it and would participate if there was an easier platform for them to be part of. Second, we have venues that have live music currently, but are seeking to improve it. So one of the restaurants that I spoke to said that they had live music in the past, but actually just like a week before I arrived, said that they had stopped having it because it was the same musician every time. They weren't able to find new places, new performers, and those would be those types of venues who've had experience with it and would want to improve it. And then last there are venues that absolutely don't traditionally have live music. That's a harder sell, but it's actually just a bigger market opportunity for us. We thought of avoiding those types of cuisines and different types of like sizes of restaurants that as we were walking down the street, but we realized that we shouldn't avoid them. Rather, we should get their opinions on why music hasn't worked in the past and what are ways that we can actually bring music in a sustainable and in a way that would work for their restaurant. So we'd have different strategies for all of them.
Okay, well, I don't dominate.
Go ahead, Rick.
Oh, thank you. That was a terrific overview for those elements. That and I would emphasize that if it involves popular culture, that people should sell anything that I think is cool, and certainly anything I don't like is probably going to be a hit. And so I am the ultimate contrarian in all of those regards. So we have the sales process. Let me just throw something out there, though, that a lot of platform plays, especially ones that are essentially brokers of information, clearly there's a multi-sided platform. You're connecting three different groups together, but only one of the three groups is paying. And so the question comes up, did you run numbers or at least stress test the idea of making this free to all three stakeholders, and that you just support this or generate revenues from advertising, other kinds of upselling, instead of charging a subscription?
Yeah, I would say that was definitely a great point, and that we considered that too. But it actually was in our initial pitch and how we had a big problem really convincing or having a revenue stream from this. But to answer your point, I think the problem with that is that we have to then scale immensely across the country to really eventually start having serious revenue from it. And I think that's it's definitely a play that we could, think about, and especially in this time of coronavirus, restaurants are reeling, like we've emphasized, and we know that this is not, they will want to be saving money everywhere. But we feel like that our value, our services deserves some form of payment that is structured to where we're bringing in customers for them and we want them to do well. And we've structured it with a subscription and through a transaction where they use our services and they do better than because of it.
Yeah, just to go off of that, in our initial pitch in round one, we had a completely different revenue structure. This is much more sustainable, subscriptions and transactions. But before we even approached that structure, we thought about how could we charge each three prongs, and it didn't make sense for the other two because musicians, we were reading so many articles about how they're just facing lower and lower wages. They're not getting compensated properly. We don't want to be charging them. We want them to get the full paycheck from the venue and leave it at that. And then for the app user, the user goer, for the music goer, for some reason, even seeing 99 cents on an app when you go to the app store, it deters you from downloading it. And that's really important for our entry phase. So we can't consider that until we have shown our success and shown that you'd want to attend one of these shows.
Thank you.
So I have a quick follow-up question on the venue strategy that you outlined. So your initial sort of target market are college students, young adults. But how did you factor in when you thought about the venues that were appropriate? How did you factor in what kinds of venues are more appealing to college students? I mean, the average college student, I imagine, is not making a ton of money, you know, that they would regularly go to a number of restaurants that may be at a higher price point than what they can generally afford, or even just having the transportation to get to certain restaurants. So I'm just curious of your thought process behind determining which venues beyond the kind of tiered strategy that you had would make the cut.
Yeah, we've definitely thought about that. And we've established a focus on the college campuses because the college campus provides both musicians and music goers. And in the early going, these are ideal targets because of their dense population and because the confines of standard restaurants and other venues. Musicians typically have to be self-equipped, otherwise noted by the restaurant. So the venue outreach will begin in those areas, but that's not to say there are further options beyond that. I'd say that have features that we've talked about in the music goer section where you can filter based on age. There's a 21 and up filter when you're looking for opportunities. So it definitely will be age friendly. And Betsy, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I guess from the side of what types of venues fit our perfect mold, there is none, but there are targets. We need something that, in terms of size of the restaurant, can fit a performer, whether that be a single, a solo, duo, trio. From the view of the music goer, the college student, the high school student, the young couple, of course, we're not catering towards the 5-star restaurant with the white tablecloth. We are catering towards the types of restaurants that we see in media that are very accessible and very affordable. And the distance from Swarthmore to media is ideal. It's less than a 10-minute drive. Someone has a car on campus, or at least it limits the need for travel. And that was such an important part of our piece before coronavirus, because traveling into Philadelphia as a Swarthmore student and paying $14 round trip every single time, it gets expensive. So having something that's closer, that you don't have to plan ahead for the SEPTA, which is our train route, and you don't have to pay for tickets, it makes it way more accessible than any alternative. We're not saying that it'll be the cheapest dinner that you order or it'll be a cheap drink, but it's definitely cheaper than going to a concert and getting nothing else but your ticket.